Hello, how's it going? Adam Elmakais here, and I have been getting a lot of questions in how I edit my photos, kind of following up our recent Be a Photographer challenges. A lot of people want to know how to process their images better. So I'm going to show you, and I'm going to use live photography as an example because that is what I use, and I suggest using Lightroom. Lightroom is the best, in my opinion. It's the quickest, it's the easiest to learn, and unless you're doing a lot of manipulation of your images, you don't really need to use Photoshop. Lightroom is kind of how you edit it. Photoshop is how it's a little bit more advanced. You don't really need 90% of the things in there. Lightroom has it all. So, here we go. So first of all, you're going to be working what are called catalogs. And catalogs are basically a collection of shortcuts to your images. Well, they don't have to be shortcuts, but that's how I use them. And I'll show you here from the start. So basically, you drag a photo into Lightroom. It'll give you a dialog that looks something like this. On the left is your finder. It shows where all your sources are, so your different areas. And on the right is kind of, I don't know, your settings for your import. On the top here, you have the different ways to import. And depending on what you're trying to do, you can select a different thing up here. Copy as DNG is copy to a new location, import and convert to a DNG. Copy is copy photos to a new location and add to catalog. Move is move the photos to a new location and add to catalog. And add is what I use. So basically you have the option of taking these root files, either copying them, so making a new copy of them, or moving them, so moving them from their current location to the catalog, or adding them. And that basically just adds a link to this source file, and that's what I do. So it doesn't create that much new information. It just kind of creates an edit file to your root image, which might be, 10, 20, 30 megabytes, depending on what you're shooting with. So that's what I do, and then I keep all my images stored away on my hard drive in a separate area. I'm not going to import this, I just wanted to show you the dialog. I'm going to go ahead and press cancel here, and that'll bring you to your library, and you can see it says library right up here. If I click this and bring it back up, and it's your first of these many options up here. I don't use these last 5 options at all. I just use library and develop, so that's all I'm going to go over. And library is your area where you can kind of sort through and keyword, quick develop, and organize your images. It's your library, and it's going to show on thumbnail mode at first here. You can change that by pressing spacebar, making it bigger, escape, make it smaller, and then you can arrow through these really easily and go up and down. And you have different ways to sort them. You have different viewing styles right here. You have your different folders on the left where the images could be coming from. You have publishing services to post them to the internet. And on the right, you have quick develop. You have your histogram, the information about your image, and you have, if you scroll down, keywords, keyword suggestions, the set of keywords, and then all your metadata. So where the photo was taken, the file name, the folder, all that stuff, copyright. And on the bottom, you have filters, you have the file names, and you have a side-scrolling area of all the images. You can get rid of any of these dialog boxes by clicking on the edge. Quick shortcut is tab, that gets rid of the sides. Bottom like this, and that's just if you want more view time. So it would be nice if this would pop back up now that I got rid of it. There it is. So sorting through your images, very easy actually, and this is what I do. I basically go through with my arrows and I find the ones I like, and when I like one I press the tilde button right here. You can see that flags it on and off. I'm basically putting a flag on it and saying, hey, I like this photograph. I have already done this, so I'm not going to do it anymore. But let's say I just shot a show, I have 5,000 images, I go through and I flag maybe 200 of them, and then I click develop. And now after I go to develop, now I have a little bit different of a screen here. So I have some presets over here that I use once in a while. Some of them I've created, some of them are from ViscoCam. They're just kind of, they helped me a lot when I was starting to learn how to use Lightroom because I didn't really understand it very much. So I got these presets and I could just put them on all my images, and the presets don't do anything that you can't do, but I could use them and then kind of reverse engineer them, and that helped me learn how to use Lightroom. So, presets. I'm going to get rid of this side over here because we don't really need it, and that'll give us a bigger photo to work with. So just like in library, we have all of our information here on the right. You have your histogram, you have your information about how the photo was shot, you have all your different tools you can use up here, and if you scroll down, you have all the other tools you can use for editing, and that's what I'm going to go through with you right now. But let's backtrack a little bit. So you filtered through, you flagged all your images. You can click this right here and it'll show you just your flagged images in the bottom, and that's it. So all your favorites, and these are all edited, but we can click on one, and now within it, we can arrow through them, and if you use numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you can star them, and you'll see the stars right here. And then if you use 6, 7, 8, and 9, you can color them, and you'll see the colors right here. And basically, then after you do that, you have further ways to sort them. So let's say I put my favorites as number 1, and my live photos is red, and my favorite and my least favorites is number 5, and my candid photos as blue. That way, if I want to edit my most favorite blue images, I can do 1 star and then click the blue. So, for example, let's take this 1 star, let's make this 1 star, 1 star, and then we'll make this one red, yellow, and green. So then if we click 1 star, it'll pop up all of them. See how it's 1 star? But now let's say we just want the red one. We click that, and there's some reds from last time, but it's right here. And if we want the yellow one, we can click that, and again, some yellows from last time, but the one we just selected is right here. And if we click green, we got it right here. So, pretty straightforward. It's basically you have a way to sort it, and then you have a way to sort it even again. So you have a lot of options on how to organize your images within your editing program, so you can quickly select a group of shots that you want to use, edit, process, or whatever you need to do with them. Alright, so let's discuss this histogram. First, let's find a photo we want to edit, a cool one. Let's go with, let's find one that has a lot of range to it. A lot of range. What has a lot of range? Let's try this image. I like this photo. So, quick. Here's the before, here's the after. You can see a lot has changed, and you can really do a lot with the image, and I bet every time I edit an image, it'll come out differently. But let's go ahead and create a duplicate. So basically what we're going to do is create a virtual copy, and this is a copy of the edit, but not a copy of the image. No more files were created on my computer. It's just another edit. So I can edit this one independently of affecting this one, and I can still keep my first edit. So let's go ahead and reset this one. So you can do that by just pressing the reset button, and we'll scroll up to the top. Alright, let's get to the good stuff. You ready to learn some editing? Let's do this. Okay, so you're going to edit your photo. You want to make it better. How to improve it. Lightroom has so many tools for this, and all of them are basic. They make sense. You know, they do exactly what they say they will do. It's just a matter of playing around with them and kind of figuring out how to make them work best for you. So let's start at the top here. We have our crop. You click that, it's going to bring up some tools here. It's going to bring up a grid with a rule of thirds on it. And just go ahead and you can crop your image however you want. Bring it down, bring it up. If you want to stick to a aspect ratio, you can do that as well. I just do however I want and keep it original. You can use this angle tool to take it and draw it. Usually you draw it across a straight line, and then it adjusts the crop accordingly so that everything kind of levels out. It corrects your horizon. It's really good for landscapes. You just basically click and drag that line across your horizon. You can also change the angle by sliding the slider, and you can make the crop maintain its proportions by clicking this lock. And that's pretty much all there is to this dialog box. But I'm going to go ahead and do this crop manually because I know exactly how I want it to look. Bring it down a little bit, and I just kind of play around with stuff and blink my eyes a few times, see it, wait until it looks cool. You know, it's your photograph. Do whatever you want. Cool. Then we have a few other tools up here, which I'm going to get to later. But first, we're just going to go down this basically through everything, and I'll show you. We have, on the right here, we have your basic editing. You have your tone curve. You have your hue, saturation, luminance, color, and black and white. You have your split toning, detail, lens corrections, effects, camera calibration. And I know it seems like a lot right now, but it's not. We're going to go through it one at a time, and it'll make a lot of sense. It's super easy, and you'll get the hang of it way quicker than you think you will. So exposure. It's just exposing your photo, brighter, darker. If you're shooting in RAW, you're going to have more control with this. If you're shooting in JPEG, it's going to be a little bit more detrimental to your image, so keep that in mind. Shooting in RAW is definitely the way to go. So bring the exposure up because it's a little bit of a dark image. If I wanted to make it darker, I could bring it down, maybe make it moody, but I definitely want it a little bit brighter. So after we make it brighter, we can go move down to our white balance right here. And basically you have options here. You can go in black and white, or you can keep it in color. I'm going to keep in color because I want to. And this droplet here auto corrects your white balance. So let's say you have an image and everything's looking a little bit yellow, but you're wearing a white t-shirt or there's a white wall. Go ahead and just select with this dropper on the white area, and it'll automatically correct the whole image, change these sliders on its own to correct it for the white balance. Now for me, when I click those lights, You can see how these lights are kind of blue, especially when I hold this over it. See how it's bluish gray? So when I click it, it's going to make it more yellow. Watch this. More yellow. But you can do it manually. So if I want the image to be more yellow, up here, more blue, down here, tint, more green, more purple. It's really up to you. It's personal preference. It's whatever you want. It's your image. For me, I want it to look something like this, because I want the hands to be warm. I want them to be kind of welcoming and nice looking skin tones, but at the same time I want the lights to look a little bit different and be a little more blue. And I actually think I want to change this crop a tiny bit, something like that. Perfect. We got it. So next we have contrast, and basically more contrast, less contrast. I'm not really going to use that much. I might decrease it a little bit just to give myself a little bit of this area not as dark, but other than that I'm going to keep it how it is. Then we have highlights. If you move this up, it's going to make your highlights brighter. If you move it down, it's going to recover them. So if you have a sky that's too bright, this is your way to recover it right here. Same with shadows. It's just the same for shadows. Make some stuff darker in the shadows area if you want, or make it brighter. So you can see how it's affecting the histogram up there. Basically, it's taking the highlights or the shadows and adjusting them. And if you want to see if something's too dark or too bright, you can press these arrows right here. They're basically your warning signs. So watch, if I turn that on and make it really bright, the areas that turn red are the areas that have no data in them. So they are pure white, and they have lost all of their color data so much because they're overexposed. Same thing goes if you do the other way. Too dark, turn this on. All the blue is all just pure black, nothing to it. Go ahead and let's flip those off so we don't have a weird looking image. Let's adjust that exposure again. There we go. So scrolling down, you got the blacks, you got the whites. Same thing, you can make the whites a little bit brighter. You can make the blacks a little bit darker. And again, you can see how that's working on your histogram. Basically, this is your dark areas over here. This is your light areas, and it's just a continuum. So you can see how it's kind of all laying out. Let's go down farther. We've got clarity, and clarity is kind of what makes stuff pop. If you turn it way up, yeah, that looks crazy. Turn it way down, it looks crazy also. But somewhere in between, you can make it really do work for you. So I usually just bump it a tiny bit, and it really depends on your image. If you're working with a portrait, be careful. You don't want to make certain things too bold. But I will show you how to use this a little bit later in a different way. So clarity, again, just bring it up. It kind of sharpens your bold lines, so it makes everything pop a little bit more. Vibrance, it's going to kind of make your stuff a little bit more pale and a little bit more, vibrant. And it works a little bit differently than saturation. Vibrance is a little bit more selective than saturation, and I like using vibrance to, maybe if there's a really bright red in the image, I sometimes bring it down just a tiny bit, but really you just have to play around with the sliders and see what works best for you. Break. So moving down, let's collapse this, and there's also an auto setting for this, but you don't really need to use that unless you want to. Especially if you're shooting like dramatic things like this, it's not going to really make sense. If you're shooting maybe a sunset or a sunrise or a landscape or a portrait, if it's simple, all natural light, maybe auto will work, but most of the times it's not really going to work for you. So, tone curve. So tone curve can be a little bit confusing, and it's basically a curve that represents the exposure on your photo more or less. And you can adjust it by clicking and dragging it in different areas. And you can create what's called an S-shaped curve, add some more contrast. You can double click on the points to get rid of them. You can move the starting and ending points if you want. Up here you have the highlights, and down here you have the shadows. And you can make the shadows darker this way, or the shadows, less intense this way. And it really just depends how you want to do it. You can also work within each channel independently and kind of just bend it around like this. And this can be used for a lot of different color, messing with the color a little bit, things like that. You can get some cool effects in here. And I'm not really going to go into how to use this because I could probably do a whole episode on it. But if you want to use it, those are the controls. You can play around with it. You can even click in the image and drag the parts you want to adjust. So let's go ahead and reset this. And you can basically just use linear down here. And let's go back to the RGB channel. And that'll put it right back at what we started at. But if you want to customize with tone curve, go ahead and play around with it. Again, like let's say you're in this first mode. If you want to make the highlights brighter, you just click, you drag up. If you want to make them darker, you click and drag down, and it'll adjust it accordingly. And then you can click in another spot and do the same thing, and it'll add another point. So depending on how you want to do it, just play around with it. It's kind of complicated, but if you learn how to utilize it, it'll really pay off in the end. But that's all I'm going to show you is kind of how to use it. How you want to use it is up to you. So let's go down here. We have hue, saturation, and luminance. And basically these are all a bunch of sliders broken into different colors with different options. So hue is going to take your color that you select and change the hue of it. And you can do it manually through this. So like, let's say you want to change the color of his hat. You can say, okay, that looks to be a red. I'm going to change this up and it's going to become more of an orange. Or I'm going to put it down, it's going to become more of a pink. Or what you can do is you can click this right here and you can just click on his hat and click and drag it up or down. And that'll change it in all the areas it affects. So you can see it's changing the red and the orange. And this is good if you want to change the color of a shirt or something like that. And it goes all the way up and down. You can change all the sliders. And same thing for saturation. If you want to get rid of the saturation in his hat, you can just click and drag down. Look, all the reds are gone. Or you can just do it manually by clicking right here. Make it brighter, make it darker. You have to be careful though because it's affecting your whole image. So if you change the red in his hat, it's going to change all these red shirts back here as well. Luminance is basically how bright these colors are. So if you click on the red and drag it up, it's going to make the reds brighter. I use this a lot for like on these crowd hands. I want to make them pop a little bit more. Just bring it up a little bit. Maybe his shorts I want a little bit brighter. I can do the same there. So it's really up to you. It's just whatever area you want to pop a little bit more. But keep in mind, every time you make an adjustment, you might have to make a few other adjustments in other places. For example, if you bring up the luminance in his hat, it's going to make it a little more saturated as well. So you might need to bring down the saturation in his hat a little bit as well, just to compensate. So you got to kind of work with the program, you know. Everything's going to work different on different images. It's just a matter of figuring out how to best use it. Alright, that's all we got for that. Go ahead and collapse it. So split toning. Basically, split toning is applying a color change to a whole tone. So you have your highlights up top, you have your shadows at the bottom. You can figure out how much saturation you want here, but first you figure out the color. So what I usually do is I bump the saturation all the way to the top. And then you can change it to the color you want. And obviously we're not going to keep it like this, but let's say we want these lights to be a little bit more blue, and we like kind of this cast it's giving. It's kind of making it look old and grungy. It's not something I would personally do, but maybe you want to do this. And then you bring the saturation down until it's to your liking. So look, we can put it right about there. Now if I switch this on and off with this toggle right here, you can see this is the before and that's the after. So I added this kind of green glow to the highlights. And you can do the same for the shadows. So I bring the saturation all the way up, and you can figure out maybe I want the blue on the bottom. Ooh, that looks cool. And then bring the saturation down to a level you want it at. And then you can change the balance here in the middle. So maybe you figure out you want more shadows, less highlights, bring it to the left. More highlights, less shadows, bring it to the right. Things like that. I use the shadows a lot more than I use the highlights. And it's really just up to you what you want your image to look like. I'm not going to use those for these photos. Well, let's use a little bit. For the sake of it, I love when it's bright yellows to use the shadows to have a little bit of red. So you can see if that's a lot of red, I'm just going to do a little bit. Something like that. So this is the before and that's the after. Yeah, I like that red. Let's do that. Next we have detail. And detail is the sharpening and the noise reduction and the color of the image. And for me, you can move around and kind of see. So like, let's see his body. We can click this and do it right there. So how sharp do you want him to be? And the amount, if you move it up, you can see everything's sharpening. And this you just have to fiddle around with. The radius is how big of an area it's kind of sharpening, I guess you would say. If you make it bigger, it's going to kind of sharpen a little bit more bold looking lines. If you keep it small, it's going to sharpen more of the delicate looking lines. The detail, to be quite honest, I'm not quite sure what it does. I'd have to go look it up. But it looks like it's bringing out the details a little bit more, a little bit less. So there you go. And the masking, I also don't quite understand how it works. So let's just skip those. I never use them. I'm going to have to do some research after this video. Noise reduction is basically, you can find some areas that are noisy right here. Let's move around. So let's go ahead and select this area. You can see how it kind of has a grain to it. And for the sake, let's just bump the sharpening up a lot, just so you can see that grain. And if we go to noise reduction, you see how it's all spotty right there? You can click that up and it'll reduce it. See how it makes it smooth? So you can smooth out your images if you don't want the grain, or if you want the grain, you can not smooth out the images. And there's a bunch of sliders here to basically fine-tune that look. I'm going to go ahead and return these to their default just by double-clicking on them. And yeah, That's all there is to it. Basically, how grainy do you want it to be, how sharp do you want it to be, or how smooth and how clean do you want it to look. For a product shot or for a sky image, you might have a lot of noise reduction. For a concert image, you might have very little because you want it to look grainy and kind of old and a little bit sharper. Alright, lens corrections. This is useful if you're shooting with a lens that distorts a lot, or if you want to change how your image looks. You have your basic lens corrections, which you can just do by auto-clicking on it, and that's going to basically brighten the edges that might be darker because of how the lens shoots, or it'll remove the distortion if your photo, maybe you shot with a fisheye, and it has a lot of distortion to it, and you want to make it not so fisheye. But you can just do it automatically there. Chromatic aberration is, you don't really need this that often. If you ever see purple or green or blue lines or whatever color they are in between your highlights and shadows, sometimes you'll get this, and you can just click that to remove it. As you go through here, you have a profile, which you can enable the profile corrections, which basically means it's going to figure out what lens you have and correct it accordingly. And mine was a Sigma 20mm f1.4, and it's correcting it for the profile it has loaded into the program automatically. Color, I honestly don't use this that much, but you can if you need to. If you're getting, again, this is a little more techy. You could just skip this for now. Learn it later. Don't worry about it now. And manual, this is if you want to do it on your own. You don't want to do what it does automatically. You can really transform it a lot of ways. Obviously, if you click constrain crop, it's going to get rid of all these big white areas that form when you do that. So how can I get those back? That doesn't look, well, now it's cropped it. So let's go ahead. Let's just undo it. Undo, 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 undo. Go back down, undo. Hope that wasn't too much. And now look. Do that, and if you want to get rid of those white areas, you just click constrain crop. But we're not going to do anything much with that. We're going to leave it how it is. The other vignetting, black, brighter this way, darker this way, and you can change the midpoint by moving that. So if you want it, darker on one side, maybe off center the midpoint, then you can do that. Okay. Effects. I don't really use this. Actually, I do use this. I don't really use the post-crop vignetting much. That's basically if you want, you can see dark, light, and everything in between is just a continuum of that. Grain I do use. Can use it to make your images look a little more artsy. So you can up the grain if you want. You can change the size. You can change the roughness. It just depends what look you're going for. I'm not going to do that to my image, but sometimes use it on portraits to kind of break up the cleanness or kind of help break up areas that might be not blending together so well. If you add some grain, it kind of helps it blend a little bit. Dehaze is good if you're shooting a smoky image or something like that, or if you're shooting anywhere where there's if it looks like this already, then if you use dehaze, it will get rid of that. And it doesn't really matter too much for my image because it's not that smoky, but you can see if I use it, it's going to get rid of this area right here where it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of hazy, I guess you would say. And there it goes. And it's just adjusting your histogram. So that's a newer thing they added. That's actually pretty good. Lastly, we have camera calibration here. I don't really use this that much, but you can use it to tweak your colors a little bit more. Just go through, play around with it. It's cool. It helps your colors out. Cool. So those are all the things you have on the side here. You can always preview by pressing this before and after. So this is the before. This is the after. It is showing me, however, my original before. So this is the edit I had done the first time. This is the edit I just did. So you can see the difference in them. But if you want to see it from original, we can do it here. So this is the original. This is the edit. And then this is the edit I just did. So more options. You have some spot editing up here. Basically, this is for cloning. So cloning can be really useful. And I'll probably show you this on a little different of an image. It can be good for acne. It can be good for distractions in the image. Let's go ahead and do it on... what's a good image to use? Alright, I like this image. So let's pretend for a second that you don't want this yellow right here. We're going to use what's called the clone tool. So you click here, you have the size, feather, and opacity. Size is how big it is. Feather represents how much it falls off. So if you put it all the way at the bottom, it's going to be a very abrupt fall off. You put it to the right, it's going to be a very gradual. So opacity is basically at 50%. It's, half as powerful as it is at 100%, things like that. So let's pretend we want to do this feather all the way down. Size, let's do it about here. You can change the size real fast with these bracket keys. And if you hold down shift, you can change the feather real fast. Oh my god, I just did some stuff I didn't want to do. Let's go back. There we go. So that's how you change those on the hotkey. If you are doing a lot of cloning and you need to do it quick, then you can do that. So let's do this cloning. So we're going to take it, and let's turn the feather all the way down, and we're going to click on this yellow dot. Cool. And it auto-sampled right there, but we can move this around. So let's pretend it's like that. We got rid of the yellow dot. Obviously, you can tell we did it because it's so abrupt. So if we change the feather on it, click on it to select it, and change the feather, you can see how it kind of makes it a little more gradual. See that? So it's not as hard of a line on the edge. So that's how it looks. But let's say we want to clone it and use this part. So we can drag the source area to this orange right here, and it pretty much matches up. And then we can feather it a little bit more, and it looks pretty good. Like if you're somebody looking at this image and you didn't know we edited it, you probably wouldn't know that we edited it. You wouldn't look and say, wow, what is that line right there? It looks like they clone stamped it. You would just think, oh, it's a change in the light. That's all it is. So, I mean, I don't know why you want to get rid of these yellow dots, but if you did, that's how you do it. Another option is healing. And healing is very similar to cloning. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of that dot. Just press delete. Healing is similar to cloning, except it kind of blends everything. So if I click here, it's going to blend it in already. So this is good if you want to get rid of acne. Healing is great. Like we can get rid of his tattoo right now. You ready for this? So you can also click and drag. It's kind of painted on. That might be too big. Oh yeah, that's terrible. Let's try that again. So we're going to zoom in. If you hold down space, or if you hold down space, you can navigate within your image without actually painting. And then there you go. And we're going to make it smaller. And we're just going to draw on it. Let's make the feather a little bit more too, so it's a little bit softer. And we're just going to draw on it like this. Okay, tattoo, we want you gone. Please do this. And it'll auto find an area, but there's not a lot of skin in this photo, so we might have oh, that's not that bad. If we get the feather down a little bit. Okay, there we go. So it's getting a little shadowy over here because it's shadowy in the source, but if we can move this source to right there, perfect. Okay, cool. There we go. So the closer the source matches the area you're trying to stamp it to, the better. And you can see there that that was awesome. This tattoo's gone. So here's the before, and here's the after, and nobody would know. You know, I could get rid of that if he didn't want the tattoo in the image. There you go. And it's super easy with acne and things like that to use the clone tool, so, or clone or heal. So, you know, it's good. It's a good tool to have in your arsenal. Put it to use. So, there we go. That's clone. Next we have red eye reduction, which basically you draw around the red eye. That's all there is to it. I never use it because I don't really get red eye, but if you do, that's how you do it. So, graduated filter. Graduated filter is basically applying an effect to your image in a way where it slowly fades out. So it's more intense in one area and not as intense slowly. It'll fade away. And I'll show you how to do that. You basically click this and then you click and drag. Just like that. And right now you can see where it's affecting because I have it set to subtract 100 saturation. And if you click this button down here, it'll show your selected mask overlay. And a mask is a thing that basically shows you what area it's affecting. There's no red on your image for real. The areas that are more red are being affected the most by this. And then as the red fades, it becomes less and less affected. So just for the sake of showing you here, I have the saturation on. And you can see if I move this, the top becomes more black and white and the bottom slowly fades to color. And I can change it. I can even spin it if I want. And I can do whatever I want. And there's really creative ways to do this and use this. Let's say, for example, that I don't want to do the saturation. Instead, I want to make it brighter up here. Well, I can do that. Alright, I had to stop for a sec because my computer was going crazy. But, so, exposure. If you want to change the exposure up here, you can do that. If you want to spin it, you can do it. It's applying an effect to your image in a gradual way. So, how you use it, up to you. You have all these controls. If you want to change this one, just make sure you click on it first, and you can add more. Do that, click on this one, change that one. Like, you could just do whatever you want. I'm just messing with this so you can see. And then just press delete to delete them. That's all there is to it. Cool. The next one is exactly the same, but it's a circle. So exactly the same thing, just a circle, and you can reverse it down at the bottom here. So if you want the outside to do it or the inside, and that's very important. So pretty much the same exact thing, just a circle, And lastly, you have the brush. And this is the same as those, but you brush it on, you paint it on. So wherever I paint, it's going to be desaturated. And I actually use this in one image. I barely ever do this, but I thought it looked cool. So in this one, I made everything black and white but his hat. And I haven't done selective coloring like this in forever. And I got to finish up real quick here because my computer's about to explode, unfortunately. But this one was done. Right here, you can see that I've painted and desaturated this area. And if I get rid of that, you'll see that his face is saturated. So, before, after. Before, after. Everything's black and white but the hat. And that's how you can use it to your advantage. So that's all there is to Lightroom. After you're done, I just go File, Export. You can choose your export settings here. Change around however you want. And yeah, if you have questions, leave a comment. I'll make another video if you need. Maybe I can go more in depth about something. I'm not quite sure. But I just wanted to make this to help people kind of learn a little bit how to use Lightroom to the best of their advantage. And I hope it helps you out. Okay, take care, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Peace.